Hey guys, welcome to this episode of What's My Problem? And in this episode, I want to talk about something, very near and dear to me, and that's the subject of anxiety. But not just anxiety in general. In this, I want to focus on the secret root cause of anxiety, what I believe is root cause for many people, a lot of people's anxiety issues, including my own, which I'm just now learning about. And it's been a massive revelation for me in how I relate to the subject of anxiety. So, and even with this root cause is something that your therapist might not even know about or even think to bring up. So you could be going to therapy and not actually getting helped because this is being overlooked. So you might be wondering, what's the secret root cause that my therapist doesn't know about? Well, it's no fault of their own, but the subject is attachment theory. Now, this has been around for a while, since I want to say the 1950s when it came up. And attachment theory is all about how we as children learn to emotionally bond and connect with other people, and how we learn that from our parents. And where you end up with issues is when your parents show up inconsistently for your needs as a child. When you're scared and nervous, you go to your parents for protection, that sense of security, or whatever your needs might be. And when what's supposed to happen is you go to them when you're scared or something, and they're there to protect you and provide that sense of security, and your anxiety and fear levels come back down. You feel safe and secure and loved, and then you can go back out into the world when the danger's passed. But when your parents don't show up, or say your primary caregiver, which mostly you're going to be your parents, but it's different for everybody. But when those people don't show up consistently, then your fear and anxiety levels, like that system still stays engaged. So it's still partially or maybe even fully still engaged if your parents are just kind of dismissive of what's going on with you, or repress emotions. And then even things like traumas and abuse of all kinds in childhood also impact not only the development of what's known as an insecure attachment style, but then even lead on to mental health disorders. And it's an unfortunate thing people experience. But so again, the development of these attachment styles is important, because you can either end up, your parents are there for you and consistent, you end up with a secure attachment style, and we should all strive to be so fortunate. But a lot of us, a good half the population's not that lucky. We're not that fortunate, and through no fault, technically of our parents. It's just how they showed up, and probably how they were raised often reflects in how they raise their kids. And then that goes on. You learn from your folks, and you're often doomed to repeat their mistakes unless you take the time to learn and do things differently. So again, if you're lucky enough, you end up securely attached and a well-adjusted person in relationships. For the rest of us, you're insecurely attached, and that often has two spectrums of either being dismissive or anxiously attached. It's anxious, preoccupied. And then dismissive can often be, not dismissive, avoidant. Sorry, it's avoidant and anxiously attached. But avoidance can be broken up into dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidant, or it's also referred to as disorganized attachment. So there's anywhere from 4 to 3, depending on how you want to look at it. But what we're going to focus on is the anxiously attached individuals like myself, and how that relates to our anxiety issues. So what are some characteristics of the anxiously attached? We understand that we get here because our parents showed up inconsistently to meet our needs as children. And so now we're stuck in this place where we have issues with trusting other individuals. We often have a low sense of self-worth. There's low self-esteem. You might think highly of others, but less of yourself. There's also a constant need for reassurance, especially in relationships. Often this stuff comes up when you're in a relationship, and we're going to touch down on that a little bit more. So with that, again, constant need for reassurance and things. I mean, I've experienced this where just wanting reassurance, for silly things. I mean, it's there's a thing in particular, but it's a bit on a personal level. I don't know if I'm going to get into it or not, but knowing like I did well, but still wanting to hear that I did good, So there's things like that. Like you want that constant need of reassurance and love and care. And there's also a strong fear of abandonment, and that's a big one. I mean, anxiously attached people often stick out through even bad relationships just because they don't want to be abandoned by that other person. They're willing to overlook a lot of issues for the sake of that that security in that relationship and the sense of fulfillment and we get from it, because it's almost like you feel like half a person until you're in a relationship, and then now you feel whole and complete. But at the same time, if things come up with your attachment style, then it's kind of a roller coaster where it's like you love this person, things are great, and they complete you, but then things are going on that are making you feel anxious and insecure. And something that comes up a lot is because of the fear of abandonment within the relationship, you can also tend to become very jealous and suspicious and insecure toward your partner, wondering what they're up to. As an anxiously attached person, you're very sensitive. We're very sensitive to small changes in relationships. Just like and I mean, like, I want to focus, like, changes on, like, your partner's actions, or like patterns, like their mood, things they say and do. We're really good at recognizing where you're consistent in like what you say and do, and then when something is off, we pick up on it. And it could just be minor. It could be you're having a stressful day, or things are kind of rough, or maybe there's something going on with you and a friend or family, and you're not sharing it with us. So when you're acting off or different, we pick up on it, and it sends off alarm bells, because anything wrong with our partner could be an indicator that there's something wrong with us. They're not happy with us, and there's that risk of them wanting to leave. And again, that's massive concern right there. Again, that sets off the fear of abandonment. And so often what will happen is anxious people will get very clingy and needy and stuff, and almost smothering to a degree with trying to resolve that anxiety and start feeling that anxiety. The only way we can think to process it and get it down and get rid of it is to get that essentially latch on and get clingy with our partner. Hey, what's wrong? Everything okay? Are we good? What's going on? How can I help you? What can I do for you? How can I you want to fix it so things are smooth again, and then you can that anxiety can calm back down. So those are big ones. Oftentimes they're also maybe incapable or just afraid of being alone or on their own. It's it's very tough, because anxiously attached people want that closeness and intimacy. It's very important for them. It's all about closeness and intimacy. You almost want to be glued at the hip. These are the kind of people who you're happy to come home. You probably don't have a lot of close friends or friends that you spend time with, because you just always want to be with your partner. You want to share everything, all the experiences and things with your partner. If you go out to do something, you want to do it with your partner, to share those experiences and have those memories. And oftentimes there could be that sense of jealousy, and things kind of comes up. Again, you feel very sensitive and almost put off should your partner want to go do something without you, like go spend time with their friends. And and that's perfectly healthy. It's important that people have healthy social circles to spend time with. We're really supposed to be community driven and get our needs from multiple individuals, and it's not healthy to try to overly depend on your partner to meet all your needs. But that's often what comes up with anxiously attached people, is so much of what they want and feel they need just comes from their partner. And even the idea of going off and spending time away from their partner with friends, often they'll turn it down because they're almost afraid to leave their partners alone and give them some space and time to themselves. And then there's times when you're separated from your partner. If they're off doing something, anxiously attached people are often the ones who are, blowing up your phone when you're out with your friends. Just off, whether you're doing something like hanging out at the bar, clubs, or you're just out hanging out with them doing an activity or going to a movie. Anxiously attached people will probably be texting you, trying to keep tabs on you. Oh, I'm just making sure you're okay, or keeping them in your thoughts, kind of thing, or just making sure you're not up to something or everything's okay. That sort of thing. Like they won't give you that space. And so that's a good indicator if you're not the anxiously attached one, but your partner is. These are all things like if you recognize these traits, your partner probably has an anxious attachment style. Also, was it like overanalyzing, worrying excessively about relationships? Again, you become hyper-focused on your partner. Anything wrong with them, it's almost like it's wrong with you and you need to fix it or address it or whatever, because if something's bothering them, then they're feeling off. And because they're feeling off, it becomes a concern to you. And again, it sets off all that anxiety. And then often, over time, if these anxiety levels and things aren't dealt with, it can lead to, impulsivity, moodiness. I mean, I remember my ex, bless her heart, used to call me grumpy man. And I don't think I was as grumpy as she, frequently would say, but it was certainly there. And, I know, at times, like periods with a lot of stress going on, stress and things elevates anxiety levels. I'm going to do a video on that after this. But, that coupled with anything triggering within the relationship, and yeah, you end up very kind of moody and emotional and things like that. So there's certainly those issues as well. But oftentimes, again, it's just proximity to your partner is enough to alleviate your anxiety, which is often what keeps anxiously attached people close to their partners all the time, is because that time away can often be anxiety provoking. And I see this a lot on a personal level. I see this a lot in one of my brother's relationships, where he's on the avoidant side, dismissive avoidant at that, where dismissive avoidant, they're very kind of, I don't want to say emotionally closed off, but they don't value that need for closeness and emotions as much. These are the type of people that don't text you back, like they might not text you back right away and think nothing of it. Or say if in a breakup, they're the drop you like you didn't exist, block you, whatever. They don't care. They just, want to, move on and don't really process the emotions of that until maybe months and months down the road. But in his case, he's dismissive avoidant, and his girlfriend is anxiously attached. And so oftentimes we'll have conversations where he's like, I can't handle, all this neediness and, this clinginess. It drives me crazy. And I've had to explain to him, like, okay, well, here's the problem, man. You're on the avoidance side and she's anxiously attached. It's not just an anxiety thing, but she's anxiously attached. And they've had issues in their relationship which have helped fuel her anxious attachment issues. But there's definitely that dynamic there, though, where the avoidant people want to pull away and get space, and then the anxious people pick up on that and they chase after it and often smother their avoidant partners, which keeps wanting them to push away. And then oftentimes the avoidant person will end the relationship because they can't take it anymore. And that's something very difficult for anxiously attached people. Is in breakups, it's almost like you're being ripped in half. I mean, it is extremely, extremely painful and difficult. And oftentimes it takes a long time for them to let go and move on, or sometimes they might quickly jump into like a rebound relationship or something, just to have someone there providing that emotional connection. But more often than not, I mean, that's typically maybe more something with people on the avoidance side, because with anxious people, you're just so attached to that one individual, you'll often forgive just about anything. I mean, I know people who have stuck in relationships where their partners cheated, and I mean, my previous relationship is long term. It was 12 years with my daughter's mom, and there was a lot of things that came up in that relationship, and I ignored it. It didn't matter. Like I wanted her back. That's all it was. I wanted her back. That because essentially it's what you're getting. Like what to expect with that person. It's there's just that attachment already there, and it's that much harder for someone anxiously attached to go through something like the breakup process. They're often the ones who will beg and plead for you to stay. I mean, I've been in that position with my daughter's mom. When she had left us, it was like that. I was torn down, broken apart, and in the relationship we'd already been kind of growing apart, and she had put up with my anxiety issues for years and years, but still it was still painful and somewhat traumatic to have that happen. So that is another big thing there in the relationship. Now, the interesting thing about that though, and how I can speak to this on a personal level and as a truth, that this anxious attachment style can be the root cause of your anxiety issues, is, so I've dealt with, up to that point for about 8 years, I was dealing with anxiety on like a daily basis with the whole hypochondria thing. And it was incredibly life-changing. That, it sucks the quality of life out of you. You have days, anybody going through this now, there's a guy I'm talking to and helping out, based over in California. I live here in Las Vegas, and he's been going through it and been getting a lot of help from my experience and my input on this, and I'm happy to help him and see the changes it's making for him. But it's just tough, like, especially as a man, when you're supposed to be strong and be the mountain and stuff, especially in relationship, like, your wife, your girlfriend, what have you, is supposed to be able to rely on you for strength and security. But when you are dealing with anxiety on that crippling of a level, it wears you down. Like, you feel weak, you feel needy, it's almost like you want to be babied and loved and cared for, and you'll break out into tears. You just end up upset, because what people don't understand is the constant battle going on in your mind dealing with this thing. You want to be there, you want to be strong, you want to be different, you don't want to be that way. But it seems like no matter what you do day after day, it just keeps you there and keeps you weak and keeps you down. And it's a difficult hole to get out of. And I'm going to address more about that in another video, because I feel for most people, their anxiety issues are rooted in something like an attachment style, or it's stress, a lot of chronic stress in their life, or a combination of the two, and how that can feed off each other and keep this going on and on. So now, how do I know that this is attachment related issue? Because when my daughter's mom left, after the couple months of processing that and then getting into seeing other people, my anxiety issues I had had for the better part of 8 years disappeared. Just gone, disappeared. Were no longer a problem anymore. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, like, okay, well, they're just gone. But to have spent 8 years in every single day of my life trying to escape the anxiety and the worrying over the sensations and stuff in my body, because it was all very hypochondria focused. And I mean, I spent every day for years, like I said, going into mental health, studying the anxiety and disorders, and then meditation, and then physical health, diet and exercise and all those things, and researching all of that, reading studies, audiobooks, listening to TED Talks and YouTube videos of all of the high performers out there, the Goggins, the Tom Bilyeu's, the Tony Robbins, all of it. I mean, I've consumed the countless hours of content and audiobooks trying to figure this out and how to get past it. And then just to have it disappear like that when my relationship ended was unfathomable. But at the time, it hadn't occurred to me. I hadn't really bumped into attachment theory along the way. And so it didn't really click for me after that. And then now, moving ahead, I got into another relationship with, an amazing girl. And, a few things came up, but the dynamic of the relationship was so much better. Like, the quality of it, was so much better, especially with what she brought to the table. Just made me in a lot of ways feel a lot more secure. And that's something important, is your partner making you feel secure and not triggering those attachment issues. And just she checked off so many of the right boxes for me that there weren't really any issues. I mean, not to say there wasn't. I mean, some stuff did come up. We initially started out long distance, and she would go out sometime with her her friends to go to downtown to hang out and go to the bars and a few clubs down there. This was in Orlando, and I live out here in Vegas. But over time, when I recognized it being an issue, I tackled it in a way that allowed me to not have a problem with it anymore. But you can imagine the little anxieties and things that come up, especially in a long distance relationship where, you feel like you're more likely to lose that person because what if they meet somebody out there closer to home? And so moving forward, though, I was in college, long distance relationship, and then my daughter's mom had left the city here in Vegas and moved off to Michigan without even telling me. So now I became a full-time dad instead of the shared custody. And so I had, for a few months, I had my mom come and move in with me to help kind of look after my daughter while I worked. And but with that came a whole level of stress and things that it just unfortunately tends to happen when parents are that involved in your life. And so with all those elevated stress levels and things, I started noticing anxiety creeping back up, and subsequently, like all that stress, like I said, getting through the 2 semesters of college and then everything else going on, again, that chronic stress crept in and the anxiety started coming back. So again, this is where it links back to, anxiety and stress levels. But again, it wasn't, a few issues and stuff on and off along the way through this past year because of the COVID quarantine and being locked down. Now this moving up last year, my girlfriend, she moved out here and moved in with me and my daughter. But then a few months into that, the COVID thing happened, and then we're locked down, jobless, and stuck home all day, every day. And I think that just kind of took its toll on our relationship and our attachment styles and such. And so there were some anxieties and things creeping up, and I was definitely feeling a lot more stressed because of the whole situation. And subsequently, it resulted in her leaving and going back, across the country again, a couple months ago. And I can't convey how sad I am to have had that relationship end because of all the all the hopes and things like you saw for it, and then to have this unprecedented thing come up is a very unfortunate end to that. But we don't need to get into all that. What's important though is that again after that it was where I subsequently learned about attachment styles, and immediately all the boxes checked off for everything I'd experienced over the last 10 years in regards to anxiety. These gaps, outside of relationships, there's no anxiety, no issues at all, unless I'm overworking myself and that chronic stress comes in, and then the anxiety can start to show up. But at the same time, I had been seeing a therapist for some anxiety issues, and I think everybody should go to therapy, even if it's just once in a while, to address issues going on in your life. Like, your friends and your family are not the best qualified people to address your issues. What's important is you try to self-identify what you're dealing with, and then look for a therapist that can help you with that specifically, because no one therapist is a cure-all for every issue going on. You can't be going to the one therapist for your eating disorder or your OCD or or what have you. I mean, anything, bipolar, anxiety, social phobias, whatever's going on with you. But you can't go to them and then also expect quality relationship advice, or also expect input on your attachment styles and things like that. Like, it's important that you ask your therapist, hey, what do you know about attachment theory? If they don't have much to offer on it, which the one I was seeing did not, then you need to find somebody else who does. Therapy, just like going to the doctor to look after your body and your physical health, you can still go to the general, your GP, your general practitioner doctor, to get a checkup. But if there's something wrong, like, hey, you've got a problem with your heart, okay, they refer you to a cardiologist. You don't keep seeing your GP if you're having, cardiac issues, or you don't go to a neurologist for, again, for cancer or something. There's specific people you go see to deal with the specific issues going on within your body, and that same thing applies to your mind. So anybody who's juggling, like who's using one therapist as like a jack of all trades, well, you know what they say with that? A jack of all trades is a master of none. So they might specialize in something, or and even be relatively knowledgeable in some other stuff, but you want to find someone who specifically at least has a higher degree of expertise with something like attachment theory or whatever it is you're going to see a therapist for. So with that in mind, though, it's, realizing, okay, my therapist has no clue about attachment theory, but then now I realize this checks off all the boxes for everything I've experienced over the last 10 years. How not addressing my attachment issues can lead to overwhelming anxiety throughout, for years, but it manifests as, as anxiety. So it's very hard to differentiate that between an attachment issue and something like generalized anxiety disorder. It's like anxiety serves, a biological like survival purpose. So I look at it as like an indicator that something is wrong. I know when I start feeling anxiety, if it's not relationship related, then it's because I have to stop and then go like, okay, yeah, I've been pushing myself too hard for several weeks now, or last couple months, and I'm feeling a little burned out. And these anxiety symptoms are coming up because it's all very much rooted in your central nervous system. And that's why when you're having anxiety, you feel all these crazy sensations going on. The heart palpitations, the tightness in the chest, the muscle tension, the dizziness, the lightheadedness, the tension headaches. All this stuff is all rooted in it's your body letting you know something is wrong. And if you're not addressing what's wrong and getting to the root of the problem, then you're not going to address your anxiety issues. And just like I mentioned before, this guy in California I'm talking to and helping out, he's looking into it. He's right where I was. The anxiety and stuff was coming up because of all the COVID things. And, he's home quarantined with his wife and kids. And then there's issues coming up with that. And now he's starting to experience anxiety. And it's putting him in a place where it's stressing on his relationship because his wife, is having difficulty dealing with him being, this weakened version of himself, and he's hyper focused on all these crazy physical symptoms he's feeling, thinking something's wrong. So he's got the trips to the doctor and all that stuff going on and looking up all kinds of crazy ways to cure it. Now he's on the verge of trying, antidepressants. And I told him, I was like, if you want to go that route, that's on you, but all it's going to do is mask the symptoms. What's really going on is your body is letting you know there's something wrong, and it's either you're stressing out too much, or as a result of this quarantine thing and being home and stuffing around your wife and kids, it could be a combination of the stress and then the attachment style issues triggering anxiety within him. And so now he's in this kind of loop where he's thinking it's all anxiety and something's wrong. He's got to focus on the fact it's anxiety, and I'm trying to get him to understand, no, it's you got to address your stress. And then now you've got to address your relationship issues because it's no doubt triggering your attachment style. So you need to familiarize yourself. If these characteristics of anxious attachment pertain to you, then there's a good chance that your anxiety issues are rooted within your anxious attachment style. And what's important to know is that through therapy, you can work to become more securely attached. You're not stuck here. You can work on this and you can change these behaviors and become more securely attached. But you have to, recognize it in yourself and then address it from there. Now, if you, often anxious or have anxiety issues when you're in relationships, that's a pretty good indicator that you have an anxious attachment style, or a good degree of anxiety, provoked by relationship issues. Because there are situations where I think the people who fit on the fearful avoidant or disorganized spectrum of the avoidant insecure attachment styles experience anxiety and also avoidant tendencies. So it's like a really weird mashup where they want closeness and intimacy, but then they're also afraid of it, and too much of it can be overwhelming and it'll cause them to want to pull back and get space. So it's a very, very difficult, thing to be. And I feel like that's where my current ex-girlfriend was at, but yeah, again, that's another story. So understanding that about yourself is very much key, and addressing these issues, because what also often comes up with people who are anxiously attached is what's known as protest behaviors, where it's things they do to try to elicit a response from their partner. So, what you might see in children is tantrums and things like that. The idea is if you're upset and feeling triggered, you might shut down or distance or do something or say things or do something to try to you get your partner to come to you, kind of thing, or reach out to you, and sort of it's a very kind of manipulative thing, but it's probably rooted in the idea of, when you were young, like you had to act out in such a way to get your caregiver to pay attention to you. And so now when your needs and stuff aren't getting met, you might do or say things in order to elicit a response from your caregiver to, get them to provide, validation again, or, those reassurances that, some things are okay. So if you find yourself engaging in these kind of behaviors to elicit, like, reconnection with your partner when something goes on, you have an argument or something, or, they criticize you, these are also more indicators of such an attachment style. So with that said, that's pretty much what I wanted to address in this video, is that a major root cause. I think a lot of people who are diagnosed, generalized anxiety disorder, but your therapist may often overlook, or you're not even think to ask or come up, tackle this subject with you. And it cracks me up all these years, and just like the handful of therapists I've been to, and not once was it ever brought up, like, hey, how's your, attachment style? Like, does any of this stuff sound like you, or that, that link there? So it's just, it really boggles my mind. I really do wonder how many people out there are dealing with, anxiety issues, but they've been in like long-term relationships where somewhere along the way, their partner's triggering them with, and again, it's not an intentional thing done by the partners. It's also what is their attachment style. Oftentimes, anxious and avoidant type people end up in relationships together because of that, because of the dynamic of their attachment styles. But then they're also kind of triggering with each other as well. And so the relationship's very much kind of rocking, a bit of a roller coaster, and a lot of push and pull going on. So again, though, with that said, look over these characteristics. I implore you, take a look at it online. There's a great book out there by Amir Levine called Attached. It's pretty much the go-to book. There's also a pretty sizable, decent community of great individuals on Facebook. Just look up attachment theory on there. And, check out the book. There's workbooks available. If you can't get into therapy, I highly suggest getting the book. Maybe check out some of the workbooks and working on this and recognizing this stuff with yourself. And it'll not only lead to a reduction in your anxiety, but then a better quality of life and a better quality relationship with your partner when you can understand this about yourself. So if you are in a relationship with someone who's avoidant, you feel them pull away, oftentimes it's just because they just feel like they need a little bit of space. And it's important that you learn to be able to give that to them. Where at the same time, it's important that you're in a relationship with a partner that is going to meet you halfway and work on their issues as well. And if you feel like, hey, in this relationship, I need the reassurances. I need to be reassured that things are good or that I'm doing well. Like, these things will help you develop, a more secure attachment when your partner can be there and meet your needs. Because, these needs are important for you. If they're not getting them met, then it's still important that you work on yourself, but you still need your needs met to a degree where you can learn to grow, out of needing those things so much. So with that said, get familiar with this, get a therapist familiar with it. If you go to the website psychologytoday.com, it's a great it's a great magazine. It's also a great resource online, tons of articles written by therapists and doctors and stuff on there about all kinds of things psychology related. Important thing is, though, you can search therapists on there. It's a great little drop down box for it. You can search for therapists in your area that specialize in whatever it is you're looking for. So it's a great way to be able to find a therapist locally around you. So I highly recommend that as a resource. And again, it's not set in stone. So you can work on this, you can change, you can grow out of it. It's going to take time and effort, but when you look at what your life is like with all that anxiety, is it not worth the effort? I mean, I'm telling you from experience, I'd give anything not to have lost my relationship and had worked on myself to get out of the anxious, attachment, cycle that would, that put pressure on things. And I'd rather worked on that and saved what would have otherwise been a good relationship versus having to figure it out when the relationship ends and going through that pain and that feeling of being ripped apart, only to understand that outside of your relationship you don't have, anxiety issues. And then recognizing like, okay, well, now I got to take this knowledge with me to a new relationship, and where I hopefully don't, mess that one up because of my anxious attachment issues. So again, learn this, tackle your anxiety, help your relationship out, help the quality of your life out, and which is fundamentally most important. Learn to be more comfortable with yourself and know that, your sense of self-worth is greater than the validation you feel like you need from other people. Really work on developing that in yourself. You're worth it. You're worth the effort to get better and and deal with the anxiety. So with that said, I'm going to end this video now. Thanks for sticking around through it. And it was a little bit long, but if you're anything like me in the anxiety, you don't mind listening to a lengthy video talking about the subject, just please take these steps, look into it. Therapy, the book, read the book, audio book, workbooks, whatever, work on yourself. And I promise you, if this is what's going on in your life, you can get past this, and and just the quality of your life can get so much better. So thanks for sticking around. We'll get to the root of what's wrong with you. Take care.